My neighbor just called 911 because her Christmas tree started judging her. And honestly, same. If you've ever watched your toilet glow from flushed Christmas lights, seen a 12-foot tree get delivered by a semi-truck into your backyard, or heard Alexa whisper Mariah Carey at 3 a.m. like she's summoning December, smash that like button right now. Because if this video doesn't hit 100K views this week, Santa is personally deleting your Wi-Fi. Subscribe, ring the bell, and share this with anyone who's ever fought a violent gingerbread house, been attacked by a rogue wreath, or watched their dog host a Christmas coup. 1. A woman called 911 on Christmas morning because her blinking lights started flashing so fast she thought the house was entering some kind of festive warp speed. She said the tree shimmered like it was about to open a portal. She tried to walk toward the kitchen but swerved into the couch like she was on a North Pole cruise ship. The dispatcher calmly asked her to unplug the lights. She said she could not because her cat was sitting on the outlet with the expression of a tiny reindeer bodyguard. The dispatcher suggested turning off the breaker. She said she tried but hit the garbage disposal instead. At the end, she whispered that if she vanishes, the lights are in charge now. 2. A man called 911 breathlessly because his Christmas tree refused to stand straight after he decorated while slightly drunk. He said the tree was leaning like it was trying to escape the house. He also admitted he might be leaning too because the star fell and hit him on the forehead. The dispatcher asked if there was an actual emergency. He said yes because every time he touched the tree, it swung back at him like it wanted to fight. His wife yelled in the background that this was exactly why she banned him from holiday crafts. The dispatcher suggested he step away from the tree. He said he tried, but the tree slowly rotated to face him, like it remembered everything. 3. A teen called 911 panicking because he ate his entire advent calendar in one sitting. He told the dispatcher he thought each chocolate represented a day, so technically he had traveled 24 days into the future. His stomach made a noise he described as Santa falling down a chimney. The dispatcher asked if he felt sick. He said he felt spiritually confused because his mom told him Christmas magic requires patience. His dad yelled in the background that this is why they cannot have nice things. The dispatcher told him to drink water. He said he tried, but his body now rejects non-chocolate beverages. At the end, he asked if overeating Christmas can cause time travel failure. 4. A woman called 911 furious because Amazon delivered her neighbor's packages to her doorstep again. She said porch piracy is real and she refuses to participate unintentionally. The dispatcher explained that misdelivery is not a criminal event. She said it is when the neighbor's kid accuses her of stealing every December. The dispatcher suggested she just hand the packages back. She said she tried, but the neighbor was recording her like it was a sting operation. A dog barked in the background as if adding evidence. She said Christmas has become one long courtroom episode. The dispatcher finally told her to leave the boxes on the porch and walk away. She said she did, but the dog now thinks she is guilty. 5. A woman called 911 because her neighbor's Christmas projector malfunctioned and suddenly covered her entire house with giant dancing snowflakes. She said she walked outside in the dark and the snowflakes were moving across her roof like huge glowing ghosts. The dispatcher asked if the lights were dangerous. She said not physically but emotionally because several cars slowed down to take pictures like her house had entered a holiday talent show. Her husband tried turning off their porch lights, but the snowflakes only grew brighter. The dispatcher suggested speaking to the neighbor. She said she did, but he insisted the snowflakes were spreading joy. At the end, she whispered that she is allergic to joy this bright. 6. A woman called 911 because her Alexa refused to stop playing Mariah Carey. She said it started as a joke, but now the device ignores her commands like it has joined the Carey fan club. She tried unplugging it, but the song continued faintly from her son's tablet in another room as if Mariah's spirit hovered. The dispatcher asked if she could simply mute everything. She said she tried, but every speaker in the house activated like a synchronized Christmas rebellion. Her husband shouted that he has heard the same chorus so many times, he may legally become Mariah. The dispatcher suggested they all step outside for quiet. She said she did, but the neighbor's speakers were singing too. 7. A man called 911 because his Christmas ham exploded inside the oven. He said it burst with the force of a festive grenade. The kitchen now looked like a pink snow globe of cooked chaos. The dispatcher asked if he was injured. He said only emotionally because his mother-in-law witnessed the blast and declared him unfit for holiday cooking. He tried to scrape ham from the cabinets, but some of it clung like it had paid rent. The dispatcher advised him to ventilate the space. He said he opened the window, but a neighbor saw the mess and assumed there had been a crime. At the end, he asked if he should file the ham for destruction of property. 8. A woman called 911 to report that someone had eggnog bombed her house. She said the liquid dripped down the siding like sticky holiday regret. The dispatcher asked if she saw who did it. She said no, but she suspected teenagers because the pattern looked intentional. Her husband slipped on the porch and yelled that the steps were now coated in sweet danger. The dispatcher told her to wash it off. She said she tried, but the smell was so strong it summoned raccoons, who looked ready to carol for snacks. At the end, she said this is the most Christmas her house has ever smelled, and not in a good way. 9. A woman called 911 from a family Christmas party because her mother-in-law got drunk and began threatening to fistfight the Christmas tree. She said the tree was decorated elegantly, but her mother-in-law accused it of looking smug. The dispatcher asked if anyone was in danger. She said only the tree unless it fights back. In the background, the mother-in-law yelled that she has outlived 3 artificial trees and will not be disrespected by a 4th. The dispatcher suggested removing her from the room. The woman said they tried, but she clung to the tree skirt like a dramatic movie farewell. At the end, the tree fell and everyone blamed the tree. 10. A barista called 911 after a customer demanded emergency justice because their holiday cup had their name spelled wrong. The dispatcher asked how that was an emergency. The customer shouted that this happens every December and feels like targeted seasonal harassment. The barista whispered that the customer refused to leave until someone documented the trauma. The dispatcher asked if the customer was calm. The barista said no because they were lecturing the entire cafe about name accuracy being the foundation of Christmas spirit. Someone knocked over a display and jingle bells scattered across the floor. The dispatcher advised them to issue a refund. The customer said they wanted emotional closure instead. At the end, the barista hid in the supply closet. 11. A man called 911 because his toddler flushed an entire string of Christmas lights down the toilet. He said the toilet was glowing like a festive portal and making popping sounds. The dispatcher asked if water was overflowing. He said not yet, but the lights flickered like they were trying to signal something. His wife screamed in the background that this is why toddlers should not be left alone with decorations. The dispatcher advised turning off the water. He said he tried, but the valve was stuck and the toilet buzzed like it was preparing for liftoff. At the end, he whispered that if the toilet starts singing carols, they are moving. 12. A woman called 911 from a Christmas parade because one of the floats accidentally rolled over her foot. She said the float kept going like Rudolph Hit and Run. The dispatcher asked if she could walk. She said she could limp, but emotionally she might never recover because kids kept pointing at her, as if she were part of the show. A marching band passed by blasting music while she cried in rhythm. The dispatcher said help was on the way. She said she hoped it arrived before the next float because she refused to be run over twice in one holiday. At the end, she admitted she still loved the parade, but wished it loved her back. 13. An old man called 911 because his neighbor's laser light show was beaming directly into his living room. He said he could not watch television because every few seconds a green laser shot across his face like he was in a holiday heist movie. The dispatcher asked if he could close his curtains. He said yes, but the light still found gaps and turned his ceiling into a disco. His wife yelled that she felt like she was living inside a snow globe rave. The dispatcher suggested talking to the neighbor. He said he tried, but the neighbor wore a Santa suit and claimed the lights were spreading joy. At the end, he said joy should not give migraines. 14. A teen called 911 because a 12-foot Christmas tree he ordered online arrived by a semi-truck, and the driver accidentally backed it into the backyard. He said the tree was wedged between the fence and the shed like a massive green prisoner. The dispatcher asked if anything was damaged. He said only his pride because his dad kept saying this is why teens should not shop unsupervised. The truck driver shouted that he could not pull it out without taking out half the yard. The dispatcher advised waiting for help. The teen said he was afraid the tree might fall and crush their inflatable reindeer. At the end, he said, Christmas should not require heavy machinery. 15. A woman called 911 because someone stole her Grinch inflatable and replaced it with a political one she did not agree with. She said she walked outside expecting holiday mischief, but instead found something that looked like a debate waiting to happen. The dispatcher asked if anything else was missing. She said no, but her neighbor already accused her of starting drama. A dog barked as if supporting one side. The dispatcher suggested removing the inflatable. She said she tried, but it kept tipping over like it was resisting arrest. At the end, she sighed that even her lawn decorations have opinions now. 16. An old woman called 911 because her grocery store ran out of cranberry sauce and she believed Thanksgiving rules should apply to Christmas too. She said the shelves looked abandoned and her family refused to eat dinner without the traditional side. The dispatcher asked why she needed emergency help. She said because her son-in-law threatened to make homemade cranberry sauce and she feared the result. Someone in the background sneezed dramatically. The dispatcher recommended checking another store. She said she already did, and every store was a cranberry wasteland. At the end, she said she would serve dinner anyway and tell the family the cranberry sauce ran away. 17. A man called 911 because his Christmas pajamas shrank in the dryer and he could not breathe after putting them on. He said they squeezed him so tightly he felt like a festive sausage. The dispatcher asked if he could remove them. He said he tried, but the sleeves clung to him like a desperate ornament. His wife laughed in the background, which made him angrier. The dispatcher told him to calm down and take slow breaths. He said slow breaths were impossible because the pajamas had declared war on his lungs. At the end, he said if he faints, they should list the cause as fabric betrayal. 18. A woman called 911 because mall Santa told her child he was getting coal for Christmas. She said her son immediately declared emotional trauma and refused to leave Santa's village. The dispatcher asked if the child was physically hurt. She said only spiritually because he believed Santa had ruined his entire future. Santa apologized, but the child accused him of lying. The dispatcher suggested removing the child gently. She said she tried, but he clung to a fake candy cane like it was a life raft. At the end, she said coal might actually be easier than dealing with this meltdown. 19. A man called 911 because his wife hid all the presents and got so drunk she forgot where she put them. He said she wandered the house mumbling clues that made no sense. The dispatcher asked if she was safe. He said yes, but their dog was following her because she left a trail of cookie crumbs. His wife shouted that she was on a treasure hunt. The dispatcher recommended waiting until she sobered. He said he feared she might have hidden gifts inside appliances again. At the end, he said, if they cannot find the presents Christmas morning, he will blame the elves. 20. A teen called 911 because his Christmas stocking somehow kept refilling itself every time he emptied it. He said he took out candy, turned around, and found it full again like it was running a secret inventory system. The dispatcher asked if someone was pranking him. He said maybe, but everyone in the house denied involvement. His mom yelled that this sounds like last year when the cookie jar mysteriously refilled. The dispatcher recommended checking for timers or devices. He said none were found and the stocking twitched when he touched it. At the end, he said if the stocking keeps refilling, he is canceling school and living off candy forever. 21. A woman called 911 because she ate 47 Christmas cookies during a family bake-off, and her heart started vibrating like a mall escalator. She said she tried to stand, but her legs felt like sugared noodles. The dispatcher asked if she had any allergies. She said only to losing, which is why she kept eating after her sister bragged about her baking. Her husband shouted that the cookies were meant for neighbors. The dispatcher told her to drink water. She said she did, but her body demanded more cookies instead. At the end, she whispered that if she dies, they should list her cause as competitive baking. 22. A man called 911 because the fire department refused to let him borrow a ladder to put the star on top of his massive outdoor tree. He said the tree was taller than his two-story house, and he simply needed 10 minutes of ladder access. The dispatcher explained that borrowing emergency equipment is not allowed. He said he already told the firefighters, but they laughed. His wife yelled that he should not climb anything because last year he fell off a porch chair. The dispatcher advised hiring help. He said he would, but he feared the tree might lose faith in him. At the end, he said maybe the star could stay at eye level this year. 23. An old woman called 911 because her neighbor's reindeer inflatable was aggressively humping her snowman. She said children walking by were asking too many questions. The dispatcher asked if she could simply deflate her snowman. She said no because it matched her yard theme. Her neighbors shouted from across the lawn that the reindeer was malfunctioning. The dispatcher suggested unplugging everything. She said she tried, but the reindeer kept bouncing even after unplugging, which made her suspicious. At the end, she said Christmas used to be wholesome, but now even her decorations need supervision. 24. A teen called 911 because he accidentally dropped his iPhone into a pot of mulled wine during a holiday party. He said the phone sank like it was diving for treasure. The dispatcher asked if it was still on. He said yes because he could hear notifications bubbling like underwater messages. His friends laughed while his mom yelled that he ruined both the drink and the phone. The dispatcher suggested retrieving it with tongs. He said he tried, but the phone slid deeper as if hiding. At the end, he said if the phone survives, it will probably smell like cinnamon forever. 25. A man called 911 because his HOA fined him $500 for having lights that were too bright. He said the lights were festive, not dangerous. The dispatcher asked why he needed emergency help. He said because the HOA president walked by his yard wearing sunglasses at night and accused him of trying to blind the neighborhood. His wife whispered that she warned him about over-decorating. The dispatcher advised discussing rules with the HOA. He said he did, but they threatened another fine for arguing. At the end, he asked if excessive cheer is a real crime now. 26. A woman called 911 because her kid's letter to Santa came back marked, "Return to sender." She said the envelope looked untouched, which meant Santa rejected it personally. The dispatcher asked if the child was upset. She said he barricaded himself in his room and declared Christmas over. Her husband tried to slide cookies under the door as peace offering. The dispatcher recommended writing a new letter. She said her child refused because he believed Santa has already judged him. At the end, she said she might have to bribe Santa with extra cookies to restore hope. 27. An old man called 911 because his gingerbread house collapsed and trapped his cat inside. He said the frosting turned into glue. The dispatcher asked if the cat was harmed. He said no, but the cat was meowing angrily while covered in crumbs. His granddaughter shouted that gingerbread houses are not supposed to withstand earthquakes. The dispatcher told him to lift the pieces gently. He said he tried, but the house shattered further. At the end, he said the cat now stares at him like he ruined its real estate dreams. 28. A woman called 911 because her turkey fryer launched a fireball into the garage. She said the flames shot upward like the turkey was escaping. The dispatcher asked if anyone was injured. She said her husband's eyebrows were now suspiciously shorter. Her neighbor ran over with a garden hose yelling instructions she did not request. The dispatcher advised staying back until firefighters arrived. She said she tried, but everyone kept yelling holiday cooking tips. At the end, she said next year they are ordering takeout. 29. A man called 911 because his family started Christmas dinner without him while he was fixing a blown fuse. He said the betrayal cut deeper than any holiday movie plot. The dispatcher asked why he could not join them now. He said he walked in and saw them eating ham as if he were invisible. His sister shouted that they thought he left. The dispatcher advised sitting down. He said he refused until someone acknowledged the emotional damage. At the end, he said they gave him extra dessert which healed him instantly. 30. A teen called 911 because the Hallmark channel stopped working and his mother spiraled into panic. He said she paced the living room like she was preparing for a seasonal apocalypse. The dispatcher asked if there were other channels. He said yes, but none that featured small-town romances with predictable endings. His dad tried resetting the TV, but she yelled that love cannot wait. The dispatcher suggested streaming movies. He said she tried but froze when the loading circle spun. At the end, he said, if Hallmark does not return soon, the whole house might lose its joy. 31. A woman called 911 because her kid microwaved a frozen turkey, and now the kitchen was filled with thick black smoke. She said the turkey made a sad gobbling noise before releasing fumes that smelled like burning defeat. The dispatcher asked if anything was on fire. She said maybe the microwave's soul. Her husband opened the door and coughed out smoke like a broken chimney. The dispatcher advised evacuating the area. She said they tried, but the smoke alarm kept screaming at them like a furious coach. At the end, she said, if the turkey survives, they will let it live a peaceful life. 32. An old woman called 911 because her miniature Christmas village looked suspicious. She said the figurines were slightly tilted and facing different directions as if conspiring overnight. The dispatcher asked if anyone touched them. She said no, but she woke up to find the tiny bakery knocked over. Her granddaughter laughed and said, "Gravity exists." The dispatcher suggested securing the pieces. She said she tried, but the figurines refused to stand upright. At the end, she said if the village keeps acting shady, she may evict all of them. 33. A man called 911 because his girlfriend shoved his phone into a gingerbread house during an argument. He said the phone was ringing inside the frosting, like it was trapped in a sugary prison. The dispatcher asked if he could retrieve it. He said he attempted, but the roof collapsed and smeared icing across his shirt. His girlfriend yelled that he should have answered her text faster. The dispatcher advised calming down. He said he was calm, but the gingerbread house was not cooperating. At the end, he said the phone now tastes like cinnamon and resentment. 34. A teen called 911 because his brother bet that eggnog was not dairy and dared him to drink an entire carton to prove it. He said his stomach was making noises that sounded like a reindeer stampede. The dispatcher asked if he felt nauseous. He said yes, and also betrayed. His mom yelled in the background that this is why brothers should not make scientific bets. The dispatcher advised him to lie down. He said he tried, but every position felt risky. At the end, he said they both learned something important, but he forgot what it was. 35. A woman called 911 because her GPS repeatedly rerouted her into a mall's Santa photo area. She said no matter what road she took, the device insisted she arrive at Santa's throne. The dispatcher asked if she input the correct address. She said yes, but the GPS felt emotionally invested in her meeting Santa. A mall worker tried directing her out, but she circled back again like she was trapped in a Christmas loop. The dispatcher suggested turning off the GPS. She said she did, but Santa waved at her anyway. At the end, she said, technology may believe she needs holiday spirit. 36. A man called 911 because his Christmas snow globe collection started playing music on its own, even though none of them were wind-up types. He said he walked into the room and heard 12 tiny melodies chiming out of sync like possessed holiday bells. The dispatcher asked if he touched anything. He said no, but one of the globes vibrated when he approached. His wife said she warned him not to buy the limited edition set. The dispatcher told him to remove the batteries. He said the globes did not use batteries, which made the situation worse. At the end, he said, if he hears one more jingle, he is moving to a snow globeless life. 37. An old man called 911 because a suspicious red-nosed creature was in his yard. He thought it was a mutated reindeer, but it turned out to be his neighbor's Roomba, wearing antlers. The dispatcher asked if it was behaving aggressively. He said no, but it kept circling his lawn like it was inspecting property values. His neighbor shouted apologies while chasing it with a remote. The dispatcher told him to let the neighbor retrieve it. He said he would, but the Roomba kept dodging. At the end, he said even machines now celebrate Christmas badly. 38. A woman called 911 because her ugly Christmas sweater caught on fire from the tiny lights sewn onto it. She said she felt a sudden warmth that was not festive. The dispatcher asked if she was injured. She said no, but her sweater now looked like a burnt marshmallow. Her husband put the flames out with a pillow and yelled that she should not wear electronics. The dispatcher advised removing the sweater. She said she did, but the smell lingered like roasted disaster. At the end, she said she is returning the sweater and possibly suing creativity. 39. A teen called 911 because the Christmas crackers at his family dinner exploded too aggressively. He said instead of the gentle pop they were supposed to make, they detonated like tiny fireworks and sent confetti flying into the mashed potatoes. The dispatcher asked if anyone was hurt. He said no, but his grandmother ducked under the table like she was avoiding danger. His uncle declared the crackers defective. The dispatcher advised disposing of the rest. He said he would, but one cracker rolled toward him suspiciously like it wanted round two. At the end, he said, Christmas accessories should not require protective gear. 40. A woman called 911 because a drone delivered candy canes shaped like rude hand gestures. She said she felt personally attacked by holiday confectionery. The dispatcher asked if she saw who sent them. She said the drone flew away before she could react. Her neighbor watched from the window and laughed. The dispatcher suggested reporting the drone to authorities. She said she tried, but her husband kept eating the candy canes and calling them art. At the end, she said this is the worst Secret Santa she has ever received. 41. A teen called 911 because carolers standing outside his house had been singing the same song for 3 hours straight. He said they refused to leave and repeated the chorus so many times he felt like he was trapped in a musical hostage situation. The dispatcher asked if they were aggressive. He said no, but their smiles were suspiciously determined. His dad tried offering them cookies, but that only made them sing louder. The dispatcher suggested politely asking them to move on. He said he tried, but they harmonized their refusal. At the end, he said if they sing one more verse, he will learn the song out of spite. 42. An old man called 911 because his Christmas wrapping paper kept tearing in perfect straight lines no matter how gently he handled it. He said even the smallest pull resulted in flawless slices like a professional had cut them. The dispatcher asked why that was a problem. He said because his wife now believed he secretly hired someone to wrap gifts, and she was furious he spent imaginary money. The dispatcher suggested switching to gift bags. He said he tried, but those ripped too smoothly. His neighbor watched and said, "This is a supernatural efficiency." At the end, he said he is afraid to touch envelopes next. 43. A woman called 911 because her Christmas ornaments kept rearranging themselves into different patterns on the tree. She said she placed them carefully in color order, but later found them grouped into shapes like arrows and spirals. The dispatcher asked if anyone moved them. She said her family swore they did not. Her daughter joked that the ornaments were communicating. The dispatcher advised checking for drafts. She said there were none, and one ornament was spinning slowly without being touched. At the end, she said, if the ornaments form a message, she hopes it is not criticism. 44. A woman called 911 because her neighbor's synchronized lights were blasting the song "Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer" at full volume every hour. She said the vibrations shook her windows like a cheerful earthquake. The dispatcher asked if she talked to the neighbor. She said she tried, but the neighbor claimed the lights were part of a community appreciation event. Her husband shouted that he has heard the song so many times he now knows every emotional beat. The dispatcher recommended ear protection. She said she used earplugs, but the bass still traveled through her soul. At the end, she said this song will haunt her until spring. 45. A teen called 911 because someone dressed as Krampus was throwing almond snacks at kids during a neighborhood event. He said the kids screamed because they thought the almonds were dark magic. The dispatcher asked if anyone was hurt. He said no, but the kids ran in circles like frightened elves. A man yelled in the background that it was supposed to be a healthy snack promotion. The dispatcher told them to stop the throwing. The teen said Krampus apologized, but still looked suspicious. At the end, he said, "This is why Christmas should not mix health food with mythology." 46. A man called 911 because his Christmas nativity scene kept losing the same figure every time he set it up. He said the tiny shepherd vanished 3 times and reappeared in different rooms of the house. The dispatcher asked if he had pets. He said yes, but the dog was asleep each time. His wife said the shepherd must be wandering. The dispatcher recommended storing the pieces somewhere secure. He said he did, but the shepherd still returned to the hallway like it preferred roaming. At the end, he said he may just tape the shepherd down this year. 47. A woman called 911 because her Roomba ate the cookie she left out for Santa. She said she walked into the living room and caught the Roomba spinning happily with crumbs stuck to the brush. The dispatcher asked if Santa would understand. She said no because her kids already believed Santa was judging their household. Her husband tried rescuing the remaining crumbs but failed. The dispatcher recommended leaving another cookie. She said she did, but the Roomba lurked nearby like it wanted seconds. At the end, she said, Santa may think they run a cookie shortage operation. 48. A teen called 911 because a goat wearing antlers wandered into his backyard and refused to leave. He said the goat kept staring at him like it expected holiday tribute. The dispatcher asked where the goat came from. He said probably from the neighbor who collects unusual pets. The goat lightly head-butted the fence as if testing boundaries. The dispatcher advised keeping distance. He said he tried, but the goat kept inching closer like it wanted to talk. At the end, he said he might start charging the goat rent. 49. A woman called 911 because her fridge kept hiding the eggnog behind bags of kale. She said every time she opened the door, the eggnog was moved deeper, like the fridge was encouraging healthier life choices. The dispatcher asked if anyone else used the fridge. She said yes, but her husband denies touching anything green. The dispatcher recommended checking the temperature drawer. She said she did and found the eggnog wedged behind vegetables she never bought. At the end, she said the fridge is clearly judging her festive habits. 50. An old woman called 911 because her Christmas cookies kept disappearing from the cooling rack even though the house was empty. She said she counted 20 cookies, left for 5 minutes, and returned to find only crumbs shaped like tiny footprints. The dispatcher asked if she had rodents. She said no, because no rodent leaves crumbs in the pattern of dance steps. Her neighbor peeked in and said maybe elves were rehearsing. The dispatcher told her to set up a camera. She said she tried, but the lens fogged up every time. At the end, she said the cookies clearly had their own nightlife. 51. An old woman called 911 because her husband put actual coal in her Christmas stocking as a joke. She said she reached inside expecting candy but pulled out what looked like evidence from a chimney crime scene. The dispatcher asked if she was injured. She said only her pride because her husband laughed so hard he almost dropped his coffee. She tried confronting him, but he claimed it was tradition. The dispatcher advised taking a breath. She said she already did, but the stocking smelled like a campfire. At the end, she said next year he is getting a stocking full of raw onions. 52. A teen called 911 after a man dressed as Santa approached him and asked if he was naughty. He said the question felt like an interrogation. The dispatcher asked if the man threatened him. He said no, but Santa leaned in too close like he wanted confessions. His mom yelled that this is why they avoid mall Santas after dark. The dispatcher advised leaving the area. He said he tried, but Santa followed him to offer candy canes. At the end, he said he is never trusting facial hair again. 53. A woman called 911 because every time she opened her fridge, she heard the song Last Christmas play, faintly from inside. She said at first she thought it was her imagination, but then the second verse started. The dispatcher asked if she had a musical magnet. She said no, but her husband likes hiding gadgets for fun. She opened the fridge again and screamed because the chorus played louder. The dispatcher advised checking behind the milk. She found a tiny speaker taped to a pickle jar. At the end, she said she will get revenge by hiding Mariah Carey in his toolbox. 54. A man called 911 because his kid declared himself king of Christmas and refused to let anyone open presents without royal approval. He said the kid wore a blanket as a cape and demanded tribute in cookies. The dispatcher asked if the child was upset. He said no, but too powerful. His wife tried reasoning, but the king said her tone lacked respect. The dispatcher recommended gentle negotiation. He said he tried, but the king issued a decree that wrapping paper must be presented with bows facing north. At the end, he said parenting should come with a manual for holiday rebellions. 55. An old man called 911 because his indoor Christmas train set derailed and crashed into the nativity scene. He said tiny plastic chaos was everywhere. The dispatcher asked if anything broken mattered. He said yes because the wise men were stuck under the train and looked offended. His wife tried lifting pieces, but the tracks kept slipping. The dispatcher told him to unplug the set. He said he did, but the train kept making faint chugging noises like it refused retirement. At the end, he said next year he is switching to simple candles. 56. A man called 911 because his Christmas stockings kept switching places on the mantle overnight. He said his stocking moved to the center, his wife's moved to the end, and his dog's stocking somehow ended up on top of the TV. The dispatcher asked if anyone rearranged them. He said no because everyone was asleep. His wife whispered that maybe the stockings were choosing favorites. The dispatcher suggested taking them down. He said he tried, but one stocking fell off the hook by itself. At the end, he said, if his stocking keeps moving it better, put gifts in itself too. And that was 56 of the dumbest Christmas 911 calls ever made. Each one proving the holidays might be magical, but the people celebrating them definitely need supervision. If you survive this madness, smash that like button before your inflatable Santa deflates in protest and hit subscribe before someone calls 911 on your Christmas decorations. Now tell me this, which complaint do you think was the most unbelievable? And have you ever seen someone make a holiday emergency out of absolutely nothing?